The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched like a cathedral made of light and metal. Representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated spaces, their forms ranging from the aquatic thalri and their water-filled spheres to the towering rock-like beings from the outer systems. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Tae-Min Kim, representing humanity. Tae-Min adjusted his formal jacket as the council session began. He had been Earth's voice for 3 years now, and the job never got easier. The other species still saw humanity as newcomers, barely worth their attention. 50 years in galactic society meant nothing, when some of these civilizations had existed for millennia. The human delegation wishes to speak about territorial expansion, announced the session moderator, a floating sphere of energy that served as the council's neutral voice. Before Tae-Min could begin, Councillor Dreneth of the Krell Empire rose from his seat. The Krell was massive, covered in dark scales with 4 arms crossed over his chest. His voice boomed across the chamber. Why do we waste time with these soft creatures? They stumbled into space barely half a century ago. Their colonies are weak, their fleets are small, and yet they dare to lecture us about expansion? Murmurs of agreement rippled through several delegations. Tae-Min felt Commander Jiwoo park tense beside him. Jiwoo was his military attaché, a former Special Forces officer who had seen real combat on Earth. Her hand moved slightly toward her datapad, probably calculating threats out of habit. Councillor Dreneth, Tae-Min said calmly, "We're not lecturing anyone. We're simply asking that established boundaries be respected. The disputed territories you're moving into were agreed upon as neutral zones." Dreneth laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. Neutral zones that contain valuable resources. Resources my empire needs. What will you do about it, human? Send your tiny fleet to stop us. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Tae-Min noticed that not everyone was laughing, though. In the shadows of the upper gallery, he spotted the ancient figure of High Curator Vexthal. The Thalri was one of the oldest living beings in the galaxy, his translucent form barely visible in his water sphere. The curator was not laughing. Instead, his many eyes were fixed on Dreneth with something that looked like concern. Perhaps Vexthal's voice drifted through the chamber's communication system. The younger species should learn from history before making threats. History? Dreneth snorted. What history? Humans have no history worth mentioning. They were killing each other with primitive weapons when my ancestors were building stargates. That is precisely the history I refer to, Vexthal said quietly. There are archives, sealed archives, that some of you should read before proceeding down this path. The chamber fell silent. Sealed archives were rare, containing information deemed too dangerous or too important for general access. What could possibly be sealed about humanity? Superstitious nonsense from a dying species, Dreneth waved dismissively. The Krell Empire will take what it needs, starting with 3 human colony worlds in the Outer Rim. Consider it payment for the Council's protection services. Tae-Min's jaw tightened. Those are sovereign human territories with civilian populations, families, children. You're talking about an act of war. War? Dreneth moved closer, towering over the human ambassador. You don't know the meaning of the word. My species has conquered 17 systems. What has humanity conquered besides their own mudball planet? Jiwoo whispered urgently to Tae-Min. We should leave now, we need to warn Earth Command. But Tae-Min held his ground. He looked up at the massive Krell and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. Counselor, you're making a mistake. A serious mistake, and is that a threat? Dreneth leaned down, his breath hot and smelling of sulfur. It's a warning. The same warning that apparently sits in those sealed archives. You should listen to the elder species. They've been around long enough to know things you don't. The session ended in chaos. Several delegations argued while others simply left, dismissing the entire situation as posturing. Tae-Min and Jiwoo made their way to the private chambers where Vexthal had requested to meet them. The curator's quarters were dimmed, filled with the soft glow of his water sphere. Ancient texts and data crystals floated in organized patterns around him. You wanted to see us? Tae-Min asked. I wanted to show you something, Vexthal replied. His form shifted in the water and a holographic display activated. These are fragments from the sealed archives. Information about your species that was locked away when humanity first made contact with us. The display showed Earth, but not the Earth Tae-Min knew. This was Earth from centuries ago. Images flickered past, showing cities in flames, mushroom clouds rising over continents, massive armies clashing across continents. The death toll numbers were staggering. "This is your Second World War," Vexthul explained. 55 million of your people died. Then there are images of your other conflicts. Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East wars, the resource wars of the 2100s. You nearly destroyed yourselves a dozen times. Jiwoo stared at the images, her face pale. Why was this sealed? Because the elder species who first encountered humanity were terrified. Vexthul said simply, "Not of your technology, but of your nature. You are a species that survived itself. Most civilizations that warlike destroy themselves before reaching space. You didn't. You learned, adapted, and survived. So why warn us?" Taemin asked. "Shouldn't you be warning them?" "I have tried. For decades I have tried. But the younger species don't listen. They see your peaceful colonies and your small defense fleets and think you are weak. They don't understand that humans are peaceful because you choose to be, not because you have to be." The old curator pulled up another image. It was a simple text document, written in multiple ancient languages. Taemin's translator worked to convert it. "Do not provoke the humans. They are survivors of themselves. What they did to their own kind they can do to others. But worse, they can do it efficiently. They have learned from 10,000 years of warfare." "Who wrote this?" Jiwoo asked. "The ancients. A species that existed 2 million years ago. They encountered humans during one of your previous cycles." "Previous cycles?" Taemin felt cold. "Humanity has reached space before, several times over your long history. Each time you fell back to your planet due to catastrophe or choice. Each time you survived and tried again. The ancients met you during one such cycle. The encounter did not go well for them." Vexthul's eyes fixed on Taemin. "Ambassador, I am showing you this because you need to prepare. The Krell will attack your colonies. It is already decided, and when they do, your people will respond. I have seen enough history to know what comes next." "What comes next?" Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. "War," Vexthul said. "And once humanity goes to war, the galaxy will finally understand why the elders left those warnings. You are not dangerous because you are strong. You are dangerous because you refuse to lose. That determination, born from surviving yourselves, is something the galaxy has not seen in millions of years." Later that night, Taemin sent an encrypted message to Earth. The message was simple. "They're coming. 3 colonies. Prepare for worst case." The response came back within minutes from Admiral Sujin Han herself. "Understood. If they want war, they'll learn what humanity learned centuries ago. War is hell, and we've been through hell before." In his quarters, Taemin looked at old photos of Earth. Green forests, blue oceans, peaceful cities. His species had fought so hard to build this peace. Now someone was going to force them to remember how to fight. Somewhere in the Krell Empire, Warmaster Krelltalk was gathering his fleet, confident that 3 human colonies would fall within days. He had no idea that every human colony was built by survivors, protected by survivors, and populated by the descendants of a species that had cheated extinction more times than any other in the galaxy. The elders had warned them. But nobody listened. The colony of New Sol sat on the edge of human space, a settlement of 30,000 people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. Governor Hana Lee stood on the observation deck of the colony administration building, watching the morning sun rise over the agricultural fields. It was a beautiful morning. It would be the last peaceful morning they would have for a long time. "Governor, we have incoming ships," her aide said, rushing into the room with a datapad. 15 Krell warships just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Hana felt her stomach drop, but her face remained calm. She had been a crisis coordinator during the Asian tsunami of 2291. She knew how to keep her head when disaster came calling. "Sound the alarm. Protocol 7, get everyone to the shelters." "Protocol 7, that's full military activation. Do it now." Across the colony, sirens began to wail. Citizens looked up from their morning routines, confusion turning to fear as they remembered the drills they had practiced every month. They moved quickly, parents grabbing children, workers leaving their stations, everyone heading to designated safe zones. Captain Dong-hyun Choi was already at the Defense Command Center when Hana arrived. The military man looked almost relieved, which struck Hana as odd until she remembered his file. Dong-hyun had served in the Korean reunification forces, then later in the border wars. He was a man who understood combat. "Status?" Hana asked. 15 heavy cruisers, probably carrying ground forces. They'll be in weapons range in 2 hours. We have 6 defense platforms and about 200 trained fighters, plus whatever civilians want to volunteer. That's not nearly enough. Dong Hyun smiled grimly. Ma'am, with respect, you don't know what humans can do when their backs are against the wall. These colonists, they're descendants of survivors. Their great-grandparents survived the climate wars. Their grandparents survived the resource wars. They know how to fight. The Krell fleet entered orbit and immediately broadcast a message. War Master Krelltalk's face appeared on every screen in the colony. Human settlement, you are now property of the Krell Empire. Surrender immediately and you will be relocated peacefully. Resist and you will be eliminated. Hana looked at Dong Hyun, who nodded. She opened a colony-wide channel and responded. This is Governor Hana Lee of New Seoul Colony. We are sovereign human territory. We will not surrender. And War Master Krelltalk, you should have listened to the elders. You really should have. The Krell response came in the form of plasma fire. 3 defense platforms were destroyed in the opening salvo. The colony shook as explosions lit up the sky. All fighters launch now, Dong Hyun ordered. Ground forces, activate perimeter defenses. And someone get me Dr. Minji from the research center. Dr. Minji Yoon was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. She was not a soldier. But when her assistant ran into her lab shouting about the attack, she didn't panic. Instead, she pulled up files on Krell physiology that she had been studying for years. Get me a comm link to Defense Command, she said calmly. I have information they need. The battle that followed shocked the Krell forces. They expected frightened civilians and token resistance. Instead, they found a population that fought with coordination and determination that seemed impossible for such a young species. Every building had been constructed with defense in mind. What looked like simple apartment blocks had reinforced walls and firing positions. The streets themselves were designed to channel attackers into kill zones. When Krell dropships landed, they found themselves in a carefully prepared trap. Captain Dong Hyun had divided his forces into small mobile units. They didn't fight like galactic soldiers who relied on shields and superior firepower. They fought like guerrillas, hitting hard and vanishing before the Krell could respond. They used the terrain, the buildings, even the colony's power grid as weapons. In one district, a group of teachers and farmers held off a Krell platoon for 3 hours, using nothing but improvised explosives and hunting rifles. In another, a retired soldier named Sung Ho organized the elderly residents into a sniper team that picked off Krell officers from hidden positions. Dr. Minji's research proved invaluable. She discovered that Krell had excellent forward vision, but poor peripheral awareness. She found that their armor was strong against energy weapons but vulnerable to kinetic impacts. She even identified frequencies that disrupted their communication implants. Broadcast this frequency on all channels, she told Dong Hyun, sending him the data. It'll give them splitting headaches and mess with their coordination. War Master Krelltalk watched the battle from his flagship in growing disbelief. His forces outnumbered the humans 5-1. They had better weapons, better armor, better ships. Yet they were taking casualties at an alarming rate. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. They're scientists and farmers. Sir, they fight like they have nothing to lose. Every human civilian is armed. Every building is fortified. They're using tactics we've never encountered before. What Krelltalk didn't understand was that he wasn't fighting civilians who happened to have guns. He was fighting a species whose entire history was warfare. These colonists might be farmers and scientists now, but their grandparents had fought in wars that killed billions. That knowledge, that genetic memory of survival, ran deep. A young mother named Bora held her infant daughter in one arm while firing a rifle with the other, protecting an evacuation corridor. A retired engineer named Jae Sung used his knowledge of the colony's systems to create traps that caused Krell soldiers to fall into sealed sections where the air was vented to space. A teenage student named Minji hacked into Krell communications and fed them false information. On the 3rd day of fighting, Governor Hana sent a message to the Galactic Council. The message included video footage of Krell atrocities and human resistance, but the last part was what made the Council truly pay attention. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of, Hana said into the camera, her face covered in dust and blood from a nearby explosion. This colony has 30,000 people. We've been under attack for 3 days by a force of 75,000 Krell soldiers. We've lost 8,000 people. They've lost 20,000. And we're still fighting. This is what happens when you corner a species that survived itself. We don't surrender. We never surrender. Tell the Krell to leave human space or every colony will make them pay this price. Ambassador Taman played that message for the entire Galactic Council. The chamber was silent. Even Councillor Drenith looked uncomfortable. This is impossible, a delegate from the Vrex Consortium said. No species fights like this. No civilians fight like soldiers. Humans aren't civilians, Vexthol's voice drifted through the chamber. They're survivors playing at peace. You attacked them, and now they remember what they are. The elders warned you. I warned you. Back on New Sol, Captain Dong-hyun stood beside Governor Hana as they watched Krell ships beginning to pull back, regrouping in orbit. They're going to bombard us from space, Dong-hyun said quietly. They can't take us on the ground, so they'll destroy the colony from orbit. Hana nodded. I know, but we bought time. And we showed them. We showed everyone. Was it worth it? Asked Dr. Minji, joining them. Her lab coat was torn and she carried a rifle now. Yes, Hana said, because now Earth knows. Admiral Sujin knows, and she's coming. High above the colony, War Master Krelltok prepared to give the order to destroy New Sol from orbit. But before he could act, his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. 50 human warships had just entered the system. Not the small patrol craft the Krell had expected. These were real warships built for combat, and they were moving fast. Admiral Sujin Han's face appeared on every Krell screen. She was older, with gray hair and scars on her face. She looked like someone who had seen real war. War Master Krelltok, this is Admiral Han of the Earth Defense Fleet. You attacked our colony. You killed our people. You made a mistake. The elders warned you not to rouse humanity. You ignored them. Now you pay the price. The Krell fleet tried to run. They didn't make it far. The human ships moved with precision and purpose, cutting off escape routes and hammering the Krell vessels with weapons that seemed far too advanced for such a young species. In the command center on New Sol, Governor Hana watched the battle through the sensors. Captain Dong-hyun stood beside her, and for the first time in days he smiled. They're here, he said simply. Yeah, Hana replied. We're survivors. And survivors don't abandon their own. The Krell War Master's ship exploded in a ball of plasma. His last transmission was a simple message back to the Krell Empire. Pull back. Pull back now. These humans, they're not what we thought. They're not what anyone thought. But by then it was too late. Empress Shalri of the Krell Empire had already committed her full war fleet. She had decided to crush humanity once and for all. She had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every species with any power in the galaxy had sent representatives. They all wanted to see what would happen when the Krell Empire's full war fleet met humanity's defense forces. Most expected it to be over quickly. They were right about that, but wrong about who would win. Admiral Sujin Han stood on the bridge of the EDS Indomitable, watching the tactical display as Krell ships continued to pour into the system. 200 Krell warships against 60 human vessels. The numbers were not in humanity's favor. That didn't matter. Ma'am, Krell fleet is moving into attack formation, her tactical officer reported. They're trying to surround us. Let them, Sujin said calmly. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships execute Protocol Omega. Show them what we kept hidden. Across the human fleet, ships began to transform. Outer hull plates slid aside, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't exist. Point defense systems, rail guns, missile pods, even some weapons that made the sensor officers on other ships gasp in disbelief. Back on Earth, General Wu Jin Kang watched the battle through long-range sensors in the Pacific Defense Command. Around him, military leaders from every nation on Earth stood watching. They knew what was about to happen. They had spent 50 years preparing for this exact moment. Sir, should we send the message to the Council now? His aide asked. Yes. Let them see what we really are. The message went out on all galactic frequencies. It was simple, but it contained attachments. Lots of attachments. Historical records, weapon specifications, tactical doctrines, and casualty reports from Earth's wars. One document detailed the Battle of Stalingrad, where over 2 million people died. Another showed the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There were files on chemical weapons, biological agents, strategic bombing campaigns, and total war doctrines. The records went on and on. a catalog of humanity's capacity for organized violence. "This is General Kang of Earth's United Military Command," his message began. "You asked what humanity is capable of. This is your answer. Everything in these files is real. We did all of this to ourselves, and we survived. Now imagine what we can do to you." In the council chamber, representatives watched in horror as the files loaded. Species that had never known war looked at casualty numbers in the millions and couldn't comprehend them. Species that had fought small border conflicts looked at humanity's world wars and felt sick. Vexthul floated in his water sphere, watching the younger species finally understand. "I told you," he said quietly. "The elders sealed this information because they knew. Humanity fights not to win glory or gain territory. They fight to survive. And they will do anything, absolutely anything, to survive." Counselor Drenith stared at a document describing something called a neutron bomb. "They built this? A weapon that kills all life but leaves buildings standing?" "That's one of the cleaner weapons," Vexthul replied. "Keep reading." Back in space, the battle had begun. The Krell opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion missiles filled the void with deadly energy. It should have been overwhelming, but the human ships didn't fight like anyone expected. They moved in coordinated patterns, using tactics that seemed chaotic but were actually precisely calculated. They used electronic warfare to blind Krell sensors, launched decoys to confuse targeting systems, and employed weapons the galaxy thought were banned. "Kinetic kill missiles incoming!" a Krell ship captain screamed. "They're using kinetic weapons." The galaxy had banned kinetic weapons millennia ago. They were too destructive, too uncontrollable, but humans had never signed those treaties. A kinetic missile moving at a fraction of light speed didn't need explosives. The impact alone would vaporize a ship. Admiral Su Jin watched as 3 Krell cruisers were torn apart by kinetic strikes. "Target their command ship. Fire Solution Beta." The Indomitable's main gun spoke, but these weren't normal ship weapons. They were scaled-up versions of railguns that had been used on Earth centuries ago. Magnetically accelerated projectiles moving so fast, they hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. The Krell fleet began to break apart. Not because they were cowards, but because they had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Human ships would ram Krell vessels if it meant taking them out. Human captains would sacrifice their own ships to protect others. They fought with a dedication that bordered on fanatical. "Why won't they retreat?" Empress Shalri demanded from her throne world, watching the battle through long-range sensors. "They're outnumbered. They should be running." Her military advisor looked pale. "Your Majesty, humans don't retreat. It's not in their nature. I've been reading the historical files they sent. They have a saying, 'Victory or death.' They mean it literally." On the human ship Dauntless, Captain Hyunwoo Song was proving that point. His ship was damaged, engines failing, weapons running low on ammunition. But he still had his crew and he still had momentum. "Ram that carrier," he ordered calmly. "If we're going down, we're taking them with us." His crew didn't hesitate. They had all volunteered for military service knowing this might happen. Every human soldier learned about the kamikaze pilots of World War II. The soldiers who held impossible positions, the civilians who fought with bare hands against invaders. Sacrifice wasn't just accepted in human military culture, it was expected. The Dauntless struck the Krell carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a massive fireball. But the carrier had been carrying 3,000 Krell soldiers meant for planetary invasion. They would never reach their destination. Admiral Su Jin saw the explosion and bowed her head for a moment. "Captain Song's sacrifice will be remembered. All ships push forward, for Earth, for humanity." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Krell fleet was in full retreat. They had lost 90 ships. The humans had lost 23. But those 23 ships had taken their enemies with them. Empress Shalri watched the tactical reports in growing horror. This was impossible. Her empire had conquered 17 systems. They had never been defeated like this. "How?" she whispered. "How did they do this?" Her advisor pulled up the human historical files. Your Majesty, humans spent 10,000 years fighting themselves. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was developed to fight other humans. They know war in a way we can't comprehend, and they're very, very good at it. Ambassador Taemin stood before the Galactic Council, his face grave. Behind him, video from the battle played on massive screens. The council members sat in stunned silence. You wanted to test humanity, Taemin said. You wanted to see if we would fight. Now you know, but let me be clear about something. This was us being restrained. This was us showing mercy. Mercy? A delegate gasped. You call this mercy? Yes, Taemin replied. Because we could have used nuclear weapons. We could have used biological agents designed to target Krell physiology. We could have virus-bombed their colony worlds. We have all of these things. We chose not to use them. That's mercy. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Vexthal moved forward, his ancient voice cutting through the noise. Listen to him. Listen carefully. Humanity is offering you peace. They're offering to stop. But if you push them further, they will show you what total war really means. And trust me, nobody in this galaxy wants to see that. General Wu Jin's message came through then, broadcast to every world in the galaxy. His face was hard, lined with years of command experience. This is our final warning. Humanity wants peace. We left Earth to explore and build new lives. We don't want to conquer you. But if you force us to fight, we will fight with everything we have. We survived ourselves. We can survive you too. On Earth, in a secure facility deep underground, weapons sat in storage. Weapons that had been built during humanity's darkest days and then locked away when peace was finally achieved. Planet cracker bombs, biological agents that could wipe out entire species, nano-weapon swarms that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, self-replicating war machines, things that had been designed when humans thought they might need to destroy themselves completely. Nobody wanted to use those weapons, but everyone knew they existed. Empress Shalri received a private message from her intelligence service. They had broken into human military networks and found references to these weapons. The descriptions alone made her feel cold despite her species' high body temperature. Pull back our forces, she ordered. Immediate withdrawal from all human space. Your Majesty, we cannot show weakness. Weakness? She looked at her advisor with angry eyes. They're giving us a chance to surrender with honor. If we keep fighting, they'll show us weapons that could end our species. I won't risk that. Send the withdrawal order now. But some Krell commanders didn't want to accept defeat. War Master Vornak decided to attack a human colony directly, thinking he could force a different outcome. He learned why that was a mistake. Admiral Su Jin's fleet arrived at the colony before Vornak could even begin his attack. Her ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons already locked on targets. War Master Vornak, Su Jin's voice was ice cold. You have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender. If you don't, I will show you what human mercy looks like when it runs out. 10, 9, 8. Vornak powered down his weapons at 7 seconds. President Jae-Sung-ro sat in the Oval Office of the United Earth Government, reading reports from the front lines. The Krell Empress had ordered a withdrawal, but some of her commanders were refusing to comply. They thought humanity was bluffing about their capabilities. They were about to learn otherwise. Sir, the Military Council is asking for permission to escalate, his chief of staff said quietly. They want to demonstrate what we're really capable of. Jae-Sung rubbed his tired eyes. He was 70 years old and had spent his entire political career working for peace. The idea of unleashing humanity's full military power made him feel sick, but he also knew that half measures now would only lead to more conflict later. Get me General Wu Jin and Admiral Su Jin. Secure channel. Minutes later, both military leaders appeared on his screen. General Wu Jin was at Pacific Command on Earth. Admiral Su Jin was aboard the Indomitable in deep space hunting Krell holdouts. Tell me honestly, Jae-Sung said. Can we end this without going further? General Wu Jin shook his head. The Krell commanders who are still fighting think we're weak because we've shown restraint. They need to see that our restraint is a choice, not a limitation. What are you suggesting? Admiral Sujin leaned forward. Let me take a fleet to the Krell home system. Not to attack their planet, but to show them we could if we wanted to. Demonstrate our capabilities in a way that leaves no doubt. And if they resist, then we show them what total war means. The way we fought each other for thousands of years, complete, absolute, unrelenting. Jae-sung felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Every human leader going back to the ancient kings and presidents had faced this choice. Protect your people or show mercy to enemies. Usually you couldn't do both, do it. But Admiral, listen carefully. Show them hell, but don't deliver it. Make them understand that we could destroy them, but we choose not to. Give them one last chance to surrender. In a small university on Earth, a historian named Young-Soo Bae was working with curator Vex Thule, going through the sealed archives. What they were finding was shocking even to someone who specialized in human history. This can't be right, Young-Soo said, looking at records from 2 million years ago. This says humans reached space before. Multiple times. It's accurate, Vex Thule confirmed. Your species has risen to spacefaring status at least 7 times in your planet's history. Each time you either destroyed yourselves or chose to return to simpler lives. Each time you survived and eventually tried again. But why don't we remember? Because each cycle ended in near extinction. Knowledge was lost. Civilizations fell. But humans always survived. A few thousand here, a few hundred there, enough to rebuild. Your species doesn't know how to quit. Young-Soo pulled up another document. This one was a warning written by a species called the Ancestors. They had met humans during an earlier cycle, about 300,000 years ago. Do not engage the humans in warfare. They cannot be defeated conventionally because they do not understand defeat. Losses that would break any other species only make them more determined. They are survivors in the purest sense. They will eat their dead to live. They will sacrifice millions to save billions. They will burn their own worlds before letting enemies take them. Did the Ancestors fight humans? Young-Soo asked. Yes, briefly, it didn't go well for the Ancestors. They were a powerful empire, controlling hundreds of worlds. After fighting humans for just 3 years, they sued for peace. They sealed these records as a warning to future civilizations. Young-Soo felt chills reading the reports. The Ancestors had tried everything. Superior technology, numerical advantage, strategic brilliance. Nothing worked because humans simply refused to lose. They adapted faster than any species the Ancestors had encountered. Every tactic used against them was studied, countered, and then used against their enemies. We need to send this to the Council, Young-Soo said. They need to understand what they're dealing with. I've been trying to tell them for 50 years, Vex Thule replied sadly. But some lessons must be learned through experience. In space, Admiral Sujin's fleet had reached the Krell home system. 50 human warships dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, and suddenly every Krell sensor lit up with alerts. Field Commander Hyun Woo-song was leading the vanguard. He had been promoted after the battle at New Seoul, and now commanded a battle group of his own. His ships moved in perfect coordination, heading straight for the Krell homeworld. Defensive stations opened fire immediately. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, everything the Krell had. It was an impressive display of firepower. It wasn't enough. The human ships shrugged off the attacks. Their shields absorbed the impacts, and their point defense systems shot down incoming missiles. They had been designed to fight other humans, the most dangerous enemy in existence. Fighting aliens was almost easy by comparison. Admiral, we're in range of the homeworld, Hyun-Woo reported. Good. Begin the demonstration. What happened next would be talked about in galactic history for millennia. The human fleet didn't attack the planet. Instead, they demonstrated their weapons on uninhabited moons and asteroids nearby. First came the kinetic weapons. Asteroids the size of cities were vaporized by impacts from hypervelocity projectiles. The Krell watched in horror as weapons moving at fractions of light speed turned solid rock into expanding clouds of dust. Then came the exotic weapons. Fusion beams that could burn through planetary crust, antimatter warheads that produced explosions visible from hundreds of light years away, graviton weapons that could crush matter or tear it apart with tidal forces. But the worst part was the psychological warfare. Human ships broadcast messages in the Krell language, showing exactly what each weapon could do to a populated planet. The videos were clinical, detailed, horrifying. This is what your cities would look like. This is how many would die. This is how long your species would last. We have weapons that can crack planets. one broadcast explained calmly. We have biological agents that can kill every Krell in the galaxy. We have nanite swarms that can disassemble your cities molecule by molecule. We built all of these things. We've never used them on each other, but we could use them on you. Empress Shalri watched from her palace, surrounded by her military commanders and civilian advisors. They all looked terrified. Why don't they attack? She whispered. An advisor pulled up the human historical files that Young-Su and Vex Thul had sent to the council. Your Majesty, I think I understand. Look at this period in human history called the Cold War. 2 human nations had enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet. They aimed those weapons at each other for decades. But they never used them. Why not? Because humans understand something we don't. True power isn't using your weapons. True power is having weapons so terrible that everyone knows you could use them, but choosing not to. That's what they're showing us now. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Su-Jin received a message from the Krell government. They wanted to negotiate surrender terms. Tell them we'll accept nothing less than complete withdrawal from all human space and full reparations for the colonies they attacked. And tell them this demonstration was us being gentle. If they ever threaten humanity again, we won't show this much mercy. The negotiations took 3 days. During that time, Admiral Su-Jin kept her fleet in orbit around the Krell homeworld, a constant reminder of human power. The Krell agreed to every demand. President Jae-sung addressed the Galactic Council via hologram. His face was tired, but his voice was firm. Humanity didn't want this war. We were content to explore space, build our colonies, and live in peace. But you attacked us. You killed our people. You forced us to remember what we are. We are survivors. We survived ice ages, plagues, asteroids, and ourselves. We learned to fight because we had no choice. Now you've learned that lesson too. He paused, letting his words sink in. But here's what makes us different from you. We know when to stop. We know that true victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's making peace so strong that war becomes pointless. The Krell attacked us and we could destroy them. Instead, we're offering them a chance to rebuild under our protection. That's the choice we make. Counselor Drenith, who had started this entire conflict, stood to speak. He looked like he had aged years in the past weeks. Humanity has proven their point. We were fools to underestimate you. But I have a question. If you're so committed to peace, why keep these terrible weapons? Why not destroy them? Jae-sung smiled sadly. Because peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered. We keep these weapons for the same reason we kept them during our Cold War. So nobody will ever dare to use them. Mutual assured destruction. It kept us from destroying ourselves. Now it will keep the galaxy safe on Earth. In the secure facility where the worst weapons were stored, armed guards stood watch. Inside, missiles sat in their silos. Biological weapons waited in sealed containers. Nano-weapon swarms stayed dormant in their containment fields. All of it ready to deploy if needed. All of it hopefully never to be used. General Wu Jin visited that facility after the war ended. He walked through the storage areas, looking at weapons that could end civilizations. Each one had been designed by brilliant human minds working to ensure their species survived. Will we ever use these? A young officer asked him. 6 months had passed since the war ended. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. Human representatives sat in positions of prominence. Not because they demanded it, but because every other species insisted. Nobody wanted to offend the humans. Nobody wanted to give them a reason to remember how to fight. Ambassador Tae-min Kim stood at the central podium, looking out at the gathered delegates. Beside him stood Chancellor In-soo Park, a civilian leader who had been elected specifically to guide humanity's post-war role in galactic affairs. We've received a proposal, Tae-min began, that humanity should become the galaxy's official military protectors. Several species have suggested we take on the role of peacekeepers, using our military strength to prevent conflicts. The chamber was silent, waiting for the human response. Many delegates expected humanity to accept. Why wouldn't they? They had proven themselves the strongest military force in the galaxy. Power like that usually wanted more power. Chancellor In-soo stepped forward to respond. He was in his 60s, a former teacher who had spent decades working in conflict resolution. His calm demeanor had made him popular on Earth, and now he would speak for humanity to the galaxy. We appreciate the trust this proposal represents, In-soo said, but we must decline. Humanity didn't fight this war to become conquerors or rulers. We fought to survive, to protect our people. Now that the war is over, we want to return to what we were doing before. Building, growing, living in peace. But your military strength, a delegate from the Vrex consortium said, surely it should be used for the greater good. Our military strength exists to protect humanity, Insu replied firmly. However, we will make this commitment. Any species threatened by aggressive action can request human assistance. We will defend those who cannot defend themselves. But we won't seek out conflicts. We won't be the galaxy's army. Commander Jiwoo Park watched from the observers section. She had been promoted after the war and now helped coordinate human military policy. She understood what Insu was doing. Humanity needed to show strength without becoming tyrants. It was a delicate balance. Later that day, she met with military leaders from several allied species. They wanted to learn human combat tactics, understand human weapons, adopt human strategies. Jiwoo had to explain why that wouldn't work. Our tactics come from our history, she told them. 10,000 years of fighting ourselves. You can't just copy them. You have to understand where they come from. The desperation, the sacrifice, the determination to survive no matter the cost. A young Krell officer named Torvin was in the meeting. He had fought against humans during the war and barely survived. Now he wanted to understand the enemy that had defeated his empire. How do you train your soldiers to fight like that? He asked. To be so willing to die? Jiwoo thought about her answer carefully. We don't train them to want to die. We train them to understand that some things are worth dying for. Family, home, freedom. When you believe in something enough, death becomes acceptable. Not desired, but acceptable. Torvin looked confused. But that's insane. Maybe, Jiwoo agreed. But it's also why we're still here. Our ancestors survived because they were willing to die fighting, rather than live as slaves or victims. That determination got passed down through generations. It's part of who we are now. On Earth, a different kind of change was happening. The Krell Empire had agreed to pay reparations for the war, but they also asked for something unusual. They wanted human advisors to help them rebuild. Governor Hana Lee of New Seoul Colony was chosen to lead the advisory team. She had lost friends and colleagues in the war, had seen her colony nearly destroyed. Now she was being asked to help the people who had attacked her. Why me? She asked President Jae-sung when he offered her the position. Because you understand both sides, Jae-sung replied. You know what it's like to be attacked. But you also know that Krell soldiers were following orders just like any soldiers. You can see them as people, not just enemies. That's what we need now. Hana arrived on the Krell homeworld with a team of 50 advisors. Engineers, doctors, teachers, and urban planners. They weren't soldiers, but they were still serving humanity's interests. Building peace was harder than winning wars, but it was more important. The Krell people were wary at first. These were the humans who had defeated their empire, who had shown weapons that could destroy planets. But Hana and her team didn't act like conquerors. They acted like neighbors who wanted to help. We're not here to punish you, Hana told a gathering of Krell civilians. We're here because peace only works when both sides prosper. If we leave you broken and desperate, you'll just fight us again in a generation. If we help you rebuild, maybe we can be partners instead of enemies. It was slow work. There were incidents, moments of tension, times when old hatreds flared up. But gradually things changed. Krell workers rebuilt alongside human engineers. Krell students studied with human teachers. Understanding began to replace fear. Dr. Minji Yoon was part of the advisory team. She worked with Krell scientists, sharing knowledge about medicine and biology. She found that Krell scientists were curious and dedicated, not so different from human researchers. Why do you help us? A young Krell biologist asked her one day. After what we did? Minji thought about the question. She remembered the attack on New Seoul, the people who had died, the terror of those days. But she also remembered something her grandmother had told her about the Korean War back on Earth. My grandmother lived through a civil war, Minji said. Koreans fighting Koreans. Millions died, but eventually the war ended, and the nation reunited. She told me that holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. At some point you have to let go and move forward. That's what we're doing now. At the Galactic Council, the political landscape was shifting. Species that had been rivals for centuries were now cooperating, united by their shared experience of the war. Nobody wanted to risk another conflict that might draw in humanity. Historian Young-Soo Bae published his research on humanity's previous spacefaring cycles. The findings shocked the galaxy. Humans had risen and fallen multiple times, always surviving, always coming back. They were truly the survivor species. This changes everything we thought we knew about human history, Young-Soo explained in a lecture at the Galactic University. We're not newcomers to space. We're the species that keeps coming back. That persistence, that refusal to give up, it's in our DNA. Curator Vexthul attended the lecture. Afterward, he spoke with Young-Soo privately. Your species scares the younger races, Vexthul said. But I think that fear is healthy. It will prevent future conflicts. Is fear really the foundation for peace? Young-Soo asked, sometimes. The elders who left those warnings understood this. Respect born from fear can eventually become respect born from understanding. You need both for lasting peace. A year after the war ended, something unexpected happened. A new species made contact with the galaxy. A warlike race that immediately began making threats and demands. They called themselves the Vron and claimed to be the greatest warriors in the universe. The Galactic Council panicked. They had just recovered from one war. Nobody wanted another, but before they could respond, Admiral Sujin Han sent a simple message to the Vron leadership. This is Admiral Han of humanity. We've heard your claims about being great warriors. That's nice. Here's what you need to know. This galaxy is under human protection now, not because we want to rule it, but because we fought to keep it safe. If you want to join the galactic community peacefully, welcome. If you want to fight, know that you'll be fighting a species that survived itself. We have beaten enemies you can't imagine, including ourselves. Choose wisely. The message included data files, videos from the Krell War, historical records from Earth's conflicts, specifications for weapons that made the Vron's arsenal look primitive. It was information warfare at its finest. The Vron chose peace. They joined the galactic community without firing a single shot. Ambassador Taemin was giving a speech at a memorial service for those who died in the war. Human and Krell flags flew side by side. Families from both species stood together remembering their dead. We fought because we had to, Taemin said. We stopped because we chose to. That choice, that decision to show mercy when we could have shown destruction, that defines who humanity really is. We're not warriors by choice. We're survivors by necessity. And now we choose to survive together with you, not against you. On Earth, in the secure facility where the terrible weapons waited, a young guard asked his commander a question that had been bothering him. Sir, if we're really committed to peace, why do we keep these weapons? Why not destroy them? The commander, a veteran of the Krell War named Sung Ho, thought about his answer. Because peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered, he finally said. These weapons are our insurance policy. As long as they exist, as long as everyone knows we have them, nobody will dare attack us. And as long as nobody attacks us, we never have to use them. That's the paradox of power. Sometimes the best way to prevent war is to be prepared for it. In the Galactic Council chamber, a new member was being inducted. The Vron representative bowed to the assembly, a gesture of respect they had never shown anyone before.